Okay, back again. Academy Football Network podcast. Nice one. And today we have the madman himself, Mr. Riza. Thank you for coming on.
Finally.
What are you talking? Finally.
Thank you.
You took your time, but yeah, I get it. You can do the rap again.
No, done. Too late. You have to do that yourself.
Okay, Academy Football Network podcast, and we're back again. I'd like to thank a good friend, Mr. Riza. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you. Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So, Arsenal, West Ham, Cambridge, Turkey Super League, Shrewsbury, non-league, Academy, in terms of transition through non-league as a player coach, to Academy football, and we're talking Leyton Orient from 15s progressing all the way through to first team football, first team manager, which is generally unheard of in this current climate that we're in terms of youth development football. Then Watford, again, progressing through the ages, through youth in terms of 15s, 16s, through to 23's football. We're talking national coach, national youth coach. What is the state of 23's football?
I think probably at the minute, 23's football is a platform for players to have a little bit more time to develop and get themselves to where we're all trying to push them to go.
Yeah, okay. Now, for all sorts of reasons, there's pros and cons to it, and you hear in regards to what people say through the environments of it's too slow, it's not like the first team football, it's at times they're too old, and if they haven't got into that environment that yet, and you hear those things always kind of muttering around in regards to youth development football. Is there any truth in it, or is it, as you're saying, in regards to it gives players more time? Does it work? Is it giving them too much time? What's your thoughts?
I think it's never going to be. You're never going to get to what the first team's like. It's not possible. You know, that you're playing against the first team's full of senior players who are all fully developed and fully developed in respect of physicality and knowledge of the game and understanding of the game and technically and all those things. That's why they are where they are. I do feel that, you know, back in the day when you was playing reserve team football, you were playing against a mixture of men that were coming down from the first team if you were a young player. Yeah. And if you was a player that was injured, playing in the reserves, give you more of a realistic footing to get yourself back into the first team. So there is that element that is lacking. But 23's football is what it is. It's a platform for players to have a little bit more time if they need it. It's a platform for players to have minutes if they're in and around the first team and not playing in the first team. It's a platform for players to develop technically and tactically and physically. And I think when people talk about the game and the pace of it is slow or it's not realistic to the first team, well, the game's changing. You know, a lot of managers now that are coming into the game at senior level, people are working on building out from the back. People are working on playing through the third and different attacking elements of the game. So I think depending on what coaches you've got that are coaching at 23s, I think it gives there's a good mix for 23s to be able to develop at different rates. So there is definitely still a place for it. Can it be tweaked and can it be managed in a different way where we are trying to get boys closer to the first team with intensity levels and different styles for them to be able to be ready for that environment? Maybe yes.
And also with that, I think there's so many other attributes going on, not just the playing thing of it, or the playing development part of it. Is like we're talking about contracts now. The contracts become more real for the players. You're talking about going from an apprentice contract to a real contract. You're talking about going on loan. And yes, it might happen at under 18s level, but generally all this starts to really take form at a 23s level. In regards to an under 18, so you are taking in under 18s, some of them who are maybe forging ahead in terms of their development, get an opportunity to play at the 23s level. What's that like, managing those sorts of players?
I think providing they're coming in from their 18s team with a good intensity, so they're training at a good intensity every day. When they step up to 23s, the level's not that different other than age. You're playing with boys that maybe are 19, 21s, 22s even. So they have to get used to that. But I just like to think that, you give them time like you give any boy time at any level that they're playing at, to make them feel comfortable in their environment, and to let them know that making mistakes and knowing as coaches that they're going to come into an environment where they're not going to be maybe able to produce what they've produced in the 18s. When they come up to 20, they're going to make mistakes. I've had it myself with boys that I've called up this year into the 23s. They make mistakes. It's going to be costly. Costly in respect of goals and results, but we know that 23s football is about predominantly developing players, so we have to give them that platform.
Is there, in regards to those 18s coming up, is there anything that you see as common traits where either they're successful? I know you talked about intensity and stuff, but is there any common traits that you see in your experience of dealing with 18s coming into a 23s environment that you go, they're the traits that generally are they become successful in the 23s, or you go, that's what lets them down, or that's what they need to work better on?
I think when a boy comes into the 23s, he's coming in because he's performing. That's how it should be anyway, not unless you're lacking numbers, which sometimes happens.
Yeah, of course.
But if you're performing and you're good at what you do, so for instance, if you're a midfielder and you're good at getting on the ball and distributing and all those things, I think when you come into that environment and you can reproduce that level because you're just comfortable doing it, because you're just good at doing those things, then that's fine. But there's times when, if I look at players now, I'd say application, and taking information on board quickly is what helps them to stay there and what helps them to perform at 23s level when they come up to 18s. So some players come in and they can't take on that information, and some players can, and they're the ones really that progress a little bit quicker.
Yeah, okay. Interesting. So now the other way we're thinking about things, so 23s now, I suppose part of your remit is readying under 23s player for the real environment, whether that be going on loan into a first team environment or going into your own environment going upwards. Is there a, there's never any not magic wand, I want to say, is there sort of like a criteria without it being a checklist, but you go, dump, yeah, ready. Dump, yeah, ready. Tick, yeah, ready. Is there anything in your mind that you think, is it very difficult to kind of...
No, I think the environment that we set for them is really important, especially like 23s now. We're talking about trying to push them into the first team, which is not an easy task. It's not an easy task, one, because obviously managers are under pressure in the first team to get results. Yeah, there was
that stat the other day that I think a first team manager in the EFL or the Premier League is probably only in a job for less than a year. So
right, yeah, we know that managers are not in jobs for long times as it is.
Yeah.
So there's that element of pressure. But for us, for me, what's important is again, training with an intensity, training with a purpose, understanding what is asked of you and being able to implement it. So being able to expose them to as close as possible to what they're going to in the first team, and that's why it's important that we do train with high intensities, and we do have an element of accountability there to be able to push themselves to where they want to get to.
Okay.
So we create that within our environment with the 23s, obviously.
What does that accountability look like to you? Is it because they're coming in and doing extras, for example? Is it because they are pushing themselves to the limits themselves personally?
Yeah, I think a little bit of like individual development, so pushing themselves to go and do that little bit extra.
Yeah.
Coming in with an attitude and a concentration level that allows them to progress and learn. Yes, you've got to come in and enjoy what you're doing, but then sometimes not sometimes, all the times you have to be focused on what you're doing to be able to push yourself to.
Is that something that you, in terms of your experience, is lacking in a 23's environment for the modern? Is it different to when you was in the reserves teams, let's say, at Arsenal, when you was in the Arsenal reserves, coming through as a youngster? Is it different? Yes, it will be different for all sorts of reasons. Different child, as you said, the game's evolved. But is those kind of raw elements of an individual person changed?
Well, I'll give you an example of a typical game that I was playing at 23's.
Yeah.
So when I was at Arsenal, I was playing in a team with, let's say, Dennis Bergkamp had come back from injury. Mark Overmars was playing. Tony Adams was coming back from something. Ian Selly was playing. And a few of us youngsters in and around it playing against West Ham. Julian Dix was playing, Steve Potts was playing, John Moncur was playing.
Proper
Ian
game.
Was so I can reel off the names. It's why you have to be focused and ready to play a game, because you were going to be you either sink or swim. You either perform or you don't. And you don't get another opportunity. Whereas now I think we're sort of like in a little bit of an environment where we all have to play a certain amount of minutes. We all have to, if we win or lose.
Were those reserve games that you played when you was at the kind of, let's say, the equivalent to a 23's now? Were they like in a similar fashion managed like it was a first team game?
Yeah, it was. We had to win.
Yeah.
It was. The development came from being exposed to playing against players of that caliber. That was the experience that we were. That was when we talk about development. Yeah. Back then, that was our development. Yeah. Playing with somebody who's against somebody who's played 200, 300 games. Yeah. And you learn quickly, or you don't. Wow. Whereas now it's okay. We've got time to learn. We've got time to develop. We've lost the game for these reasons, those reasons. Let's go back to the drawing, which is fine. It maybe helps them to develop in a less pressurised environment. But
is it to their detriment? Or, don't get me wrong, we don't want to over pressurise youngsters in regards to the development and help them learn and find ways for them to learn 100%. But does it go in terms of when you're so close to the first team and you kind of strip some of those kind of exterior things away from the environment? Do you almost get you get a different experience, but does it help them long term, or does it ready for them Omar, need you in the first team today, and they got to be ready for everything at the same time?
I think we're further away from developing them in 23's now, in that respect of being ready to deal with what you're going to come up against when you go into a first team, because of the way the format is now. On the other side of the coin is we can develop them in a way where they're not under so much pressure, and they can learn over time. So it's a catch-22. You need to get that balance right. I'm not sure we've got that balance right yet, but hopefully.
I'm old enough to understand the conversations. I feel like in regards, I don't want to say not old in age, but I mean old in experience through being in environments, but probably not old enough to understand the comparison. So it's always interesting to hear when someone talks about it, because I feel like it's important. And there's definitely good things that happened years ago, and how do we drag those good things without it being a detriment to the new player, the new type of child, the new type of coach, all the new things that are happening so well in football. I just find it quite interesting to hear from coaches in terms of yourself as an individual who's had an experience of development as a player in a very good environment, probably one of the leading UK football developing environments in regards to football. Definitely and in comparison to now, you go, well, we've lost some of that good stuff just because of natural evolution and evolving development, the way we work.
I think the flip side of that again is back then. I don't like to talk about it because it's gone, and now we're looking forwards and we're trying to progress and make things better. But I think then it was at 18, if you're not ready, you're gone. And you're looking elsewhere. So was that right? Probably not, because you probably needed, because I didn't feel until I was like 22, 23.
Started to click.
I started to feel like I was becoming a player.
Yeah.
So the actual time frame we're giving players is better now.
Do you think you would have flourished more if you was in this regime of development? You're just talking about 22. That's when I actually started to kick on and started to think, actually, I've come out of that kind of development phase, and which is interesting enough that we spoke to Paul Holder, who I know you played under his district team as a little boy. But what was interesting to say, he talked about development being up until maybe 21. So it's interesting that you saying as an individual, although you was in an environment that they kind of said 18s, you got to be ready then.
I mean, it was longer, but it was like at 18.
Yeah,
there was no. It was reserve. So reserve. I was 18, 19. I was playing reserves. At Arsenal.
Yeah.
So there was that time frame was there, but it was as if like if you're not playing at like in my time back in, Michael Owen was playing at 17.
Wow.
Or Steven Gerrard or Frank Lampard or the Rio Ferdinands. It was 17, 18s.
Yeah.
They were now it's like 22, 23. So people are being given more time to break into teams, because obviously now we've got a lot more foreign players coming into the country.
Yeah, squads are bigger.
It's become bigger. It's become financially bigger. So they've been given more time.
Yeah.
It's just now about getting the balance to get the boys ready for that environment. And I'm not sure that 23's football actually gives it. It's probably going out on loan, which we know we're going to get onto. It's probably going out on loan and gaining some exposure there.
Yeah.
A mixture of 23s where you're working on your development and your technical and your tactical, going out on loan and dealing with playing against senior players, and then coming back in and then being again given a crack at. Now they've created cup competitions where younger players can play in those, especially at Cat 1.
To make it feel like
at Cat
real.
1. So they're now being exposed
Pressure.
to that. So we are trying to do different things to give these players this exposure.
Yeah.
I just think a little bit of tweaking, I think we'll have it right.